All right, we turn our attention to what might be one of the biggest stories, especially here in Canada. TikTok's jump into the photo sharing game. So it's kind of been out there for a while that TikTok was testing something called TikTok Notes, basically their version of Instagram. And I know I had read a couple articles and I was kind of thinking, like, oh, do you need to do that? Is it a make work project for the TikTok engineers? Like, why are we doing this? Well, it turns out that TikTok Notes is now being tested in Australia and Canada. And good news for us, we're in Canada. So I had a chance to download TikTok Notes and I thought I would provide a bit of an early review. So, oddly enough, Ian, for TikTok Notes, I made notes. I have
Wow.
a whole book of notes on TikTok notes. So I can tell you a little bit about it. I just downloaded it this morning. Um, I knew that it existed, but I looked in the Google Play Store a week or so ago, and it wasn't there. And then when I saw they were testing it in Canada and Australia, which is something they just announced the other day, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get it. I want to see how it works. Something that we do, regardless of if we use an app or not for our clients, we like to test it out to have a better understanding of it. So here's kind of my early review of TikTok Notes. Um, when you sign up for it, you sign up and it knows right away if you've got a TikTok account. So it knew right away that we were Strong Coffee, and I logged in as Strong Coffee. It pulled over our profile bio and our profile picture. The idea of pulling followers over, kind of like when Threads was released with Instagram, that doesn't happen. So we're sitting at 0 following, 0 followers, etc. A brand new, fresh account. I would say it feels a lot like if you mash together TikTok with Instagram, with Threads and Pinterest. Like, put them all in a blender and see what comes out. That's kind of how I feel about TikTok Notes. Um, the one thing that was kind of interesting from how I relate it to Pinterest is your feed. There still is a for you and a following feed, just like you would see on TikTok. The feed itself, instead of being a single post coming by this way or going this way, I guess, it's kind of that masonry look where there's multiple posts that you can see at one time, very similar to how you would see it on Pinterest. So that was a little bit unique. And of course, the posts that are visible on our account, even though we're not following anybody right now, very Canadian because we're in Canada and that's where they're testing it. So it's right now, it's kind of funny because it's, in a way, it's like our own personal Canadian app, which is kind of cool. It's all Canadian content, which will change obviously over time. There's obviously very little engagement right now as well because everybody's just testing it out. It reminds me a lot of when Threads came on board in July. I remember as the clock ticked to 4 o'clock or what time our time when Threads went live, I got on it right away because I wanted to see what it was all about. And it was kind of like a lot of people posting stuff, but no one engaging. It was like people yelling into an empty room. That's kind of the feeling it gets now. Obviously, that's not something that would last for very long. When you talk about building a post, I think this is probably the most interesting part. It's obviously a photo sharing app, but when you go to build a post, you can actually post up to 35 photos in one giant carousel.
Wow.
So that's a lot of photos. There's the ability to add text to the photos, which looks exactly the same as TikTok, putting words over top of the photos, etc. You can also resize and crop your photos inside of the app as well, which is kind of nice. In terms of a character limit for the post, it's maximum 4,000 characters, and you can also add a title in addition. So that's a little bit different than what you would see like on Instagram, where you can actually have a whole bunch of photos, a title, and a description. You can use hashtags; they showed up just fine. You can use emojis inside of your description as well. So yeah, it creates this giant carousel. So when I decided I wanted to create a first post for Strong Coffee to see how this whole thing works, I was thinking, well, I don't know if we have too many collections of photos that are like 35 photos together that kind of all meld together into some sort of story or some sort of topic. Well, sure enough, we do, because if anybody follows us on social, you're probably aware that we have this gigantic sticker wall in our studio. It has about 2,000 stickers on it. And it just happens that when we put new stickers up, I take a picture of them so I can put it on social. So I had a whole bunch of pictures of stickers. So I said, you know what? let's combine them all together and make a 35 photo post, which I did. I also tested to see if I was able to add photos of different sizes and layouts. Yeah. So I've got some that are square, some that are horizontal, some that are vertical, and how that would look when you scroll through the carousel. And it remains pretty constant. It was easy to do. And of course, you can resize it in the app if need be. So that was one thing that I did test. And like I said, you could use hashtags in it as well. So it was really easy to make a post, as it should be, as TikTok and Instagram and all these guys have figured out at this point. So really simple to do that. You also have the ability to share the posts to different social channels beyond just the TikTok universe as well. You can't edit posts, something that TikTok has recently brought in. You can edit TikTok posts now. You can't edit posts on this new TikTok Notes app. And there are no additional analytics. I know with most platforms now, you can get an idea of how many people have viewed it or the kind of reach it's getting, etc. The only thing is really just the forward-facing ones. You can see how many people liked it, favorited it, left a comment. And then when you're looking at your TikTok homepage, there's a little eyeball that shows, I'm assuming, how many views that post has got. Obviously, with no followers, I wasn't expecting very much from our first post, but within a few minutes, we actually had a view and a like. So that's showing that whatever algorithm is in place is pushing this content out elsewhere, regardless of the number of followers you have. So overall, I would say it's very, very early. It's really hard to get a sense of if this thing's going to work. From a user perspective, really easy to make posts like all these apps are now. I think the big thing for me is, in my opinion, the TikTok algorithm is the secret sauce. They have it figured out of all the different social platforms out there. The TikTok algorithm, although it gets a little bit moody from time to time, and I've had my disagreements with the TikTok algorithm, it does an amazing job of showing you a variety of content, figuring out which rabbit holes you want to jump in, sending you down the rabbit holes, but then also being able to pull you back and show you other things, which is really, really unique and I think is really, really powerful. If they bring that algorithm to TikTok Notes, I think they've got something. I think then it would be an easy step up over Instagram, and that's really the one I think they're focused on. But even over something like a Threads, for example, that's really where, for me, if they bring that into the mix, this thing has a chance. But I guess time will tell as more people jump on and we're able to get a better understanding of how people use it. If the algorithm isn't quite as fantastic as it is on TikTok, I don't think there's enough other distinctive features in it to make it really stand out. Sure, you can add 35 photos, you can make a 4,000 character description. I don't know if that's enough to get people to jump over. So we shall see. I'm also curious one day, with Instagram and Threads, when you're on Instagram, it's hinting about what's going on Threads. You might even see a Threads post there, etc. And you can go back and forth between the two. As it stands right now, from what I've seen, there's nothing like that in TikTok Notes where you can jump back and forth between the two apps. Yeah. So it is a standalone app. That's something else to keep in mind. It's not through TikTok. It's a standalone app. Yeah. So overall, you know what? We'll see where it goes. But yeah, that algorithm's the big thing. If they decide to really go hard with the algorithm here, maybe there's something there. But it's really, really too early to tell. But it's fun right now because it's all Canadian people talking about Canadian things. So it's kind of neat. A lot of our feed, because we don't follow anybody, was Vancouver based, which obviously makes sense. That's kind of the really big population base close to us here in Edmonton. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. And I know, Ian, you're not a TikTok user. No. Do you think that we need another app out there right now?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I think it's certainly interesting. As we were talking about before we started recording the podcast, it seems like obviously Instagram or Meta were trying to get in on the TikTok action by when they released Threads, they were trying to do something.
The Twitter thing.
Twitter that's already been done. Now TikTok is kind of encroaching on the area that, again, that's already been treaded by by Instagram and things. So we are seeing some overlap, obviously, and I think it will be interesting to see how they do things similarly and differently. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. I'm positive that what you mentioned about the fact that it's the two apps and how they'll promote it, I have no doubt that they will start putting little snippets inside TikTok itself, start potentially pulling little elements over so that you know, it customizes you to what you're going to see there by the time you download the app and get people more familiar with that. But
Yeah.
it'll be an
Yeah.
interesting time to see what happens.
Yeah. And too early to tell if we're going to stick on it as an agency because you know what, we're super
Sure.
busy. We're already busy enough. Do I want to share even more stuff? But we will see. We will see.